Welcome to Futures Friday, December 11th, 2020. My name is Rebecca Ryan. Today we have a very special guest, Dr. Ginny Whitelaw. As you may have seen in her bio, but if you didn't, no shade, it's Friday. Don't expect you to keep up on all the reading. She's trained as a scientist, right? She has a PhD in the deep art of science. And so she's in a way the perfect person to have written her new book, Resonate, right? But I've known Ginny for about 6 years before Resonate came out. And I want to just open with a quick story. Because you may be wondering, what the hell are we doing talking to a Zen master and an author when this is Futures Friday? So if you would let me just indulge. I met Ginny 6 years ago. She was teaching a Zen leader weekend workshop at the dojo in Spring Green, Madison. I was new to that dojo and I was new to Ginny, but I was not new to meditation. I had been doing Shambhala meditation, sort of in the Sharon Salzberg School of Loving Kindness meditation for 12 years. And I didn't know what Zen was. I had no idea what Zen was, but Ginny asked if I would come out on the Saturday night of the program and do a talk on next gen Zen. Has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? And she said, we'll trade you tuition for the weekend program if you'll come out and do the talk. So I was very happy to do the talk. But I also got to take part in the 4-day program. And some of you on this call have done that same program. And the very last sit, the last seated meditation, which was the longest seated meditation, it was the standard length of a meditation in a Zen dojo, about 40 minutes. I was wrestling with myself. How can I stay still this long? What the heck am I doing here? Some of this really hurts, but man, some of this feels really good. And it was very different than the kinds of experiences I would have with my Shambhala meditation. I literally felt an angel on one shoulder saying, this is right in your backyard in Madison. You need to keep going for it. And you need to keep up with this dojo. And the devil on my shoulder was saying, you have a lot more things to do than sit on a cushion, for crying out loud. And I remember breaking into a big grin, because in this case, the angel was going to win. And about a month after that, I asked Ginny if she would be my teacher, and we're still going strong. So in the intervening 6 years, I came to a program that was based around this book, The Zen Leader, 10 Flips to go from barely coping to transforming. And the book that came before that was this fantastic book about the 4 energy patterns that Ginny wrote based on the Phoebe. For those of you who've been to Futurist Camp or through Zen Leader 1, you have your Phoebe results if you're a visionary driver, collaborator, organizer. And I've gone on to get certified to teach this. Ginny and I have taught together. We've taught separately. Now we're teaching in this virtual online world. And when you think about leadership, and you think about what you want in a leader, you can name all the attributes. You want somebody who's calm, somebody who's kind, somebody who's focused, somebody who knows how to paint a picture of a bright future and enlist the right people. That person is Dr. Ginny Whitelaw. So it's a pleasure, a real pleasure, to have Ginny with us today. We're going to talk about Zen leadership. We're going to talk about her new book. We're going to talk about the future and how it all weaves together. So, Dr. Whitelaw, welcome aboard. Do you have any opening remarks for the group?
Wow, what a generous introduction. And thank you all for being here. What a wonderful Friday you're creating for people, Rebecca. I just want to mention the prequel to the story that Rebecca shared of how I found Rebecca. And that was sitting at the dojo. Gordon Green and I were talking about about next generation Zen and what it would look like in the future, right? In the future. And I just Googled next gen Zen to see what would come up. And I saw next gen consulting. And there was this person, Rebecca Ryan, who was just in Madison, was like down the road, So I reached out to her and somehow knew from the start that this was going to be an important connection, as it has most assuredly become. So, what wonderful energy Rebecca brings to our Institute for Zen Leadership, to our dojo, and to, boy, I'm sure all of you. She was early on described to me as a human spark plug. And I don't think any of you would disagree, would you?
I see how this black belt works, Whitelaw. I see how you've taken this energy, this spotlight on you, and turned it around. So we're going to stop that right now. I'm completely uncomfortable with this. We're going to shine the spotlight back on you. So, as always, y'all, we want to know what you're thinking about the questions you have for Dr. Whitelaw. I'll moderate those as we go. So, Ginny and I have some sort of back and forth that we want to do. Ginny's got an exercise that she is going to encourage us to do in a dyad with each other. We know you guys love to talk to each other, and you're such a generous group in sharing feedback and so forth. But let's dive in, Ginny. My friend Kathy, whom you also know, my friend Kathy said to me the other week, we only know each other through the dojo. And she said, "What do you do for a living?" And I said, "I'm a futurist." And she's like, "Okay, wait just a second. What does Zen and futuring have to do with each other?" And I said two words: fearlessness and connection. Fearlessness and connection. So I wonder, Ginny, if you could speak as a Zen master, as a leadership coach to great leaders, high level leaders around the world, when you think of what Zen contributes to fearlessness and to connection, where do you go with that? How
Where
do
do
you
I go?
think about those two things?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. We say there's different ways to talk about Zen, and they're all inadequate. And yet, one of the descriptions of Zen that has really spoken to me over the years was from the great Zen master Joshu, who described it as being as a ball on fast-moving waters. If you just picture that for a moment, a ball on fast-moving waters, a ball has no fear, right? And a ball is completely connected to the water. So when it goes faster, the ball just moves a little faster. When it turns this way, that way, and so on. And now if we take you, Paul or Lisa, Joanne, Charlie, we throw you into fast moving waters, what do you do? Well, if you're like me, right, you might start to wonder, like, can I survive these waters? These waters are kind of cold, and you might start grasping at straws or worrying about, is there a waterfall in this picture? In other words, we worry about protecting ourselves, right? We have this ego that's very concerned with survival. And that's not a bad thing. We'd be psychotic without it. And yet it gets us in our own way because we try to control what we can't control and we fail to notice what's available to work with. So we become fearful in our sense of separation from what is, and we fail to connect with the energy available that we could naturally resonate with to enact our purpose. And it's when we can relax and feel a part of the whole picture that we're plugged into the past, present, and future. We are plugged into one another. We are plugged into this earth. We are a part of all of it. And it flows through us like energetic waves. The part that's yours, Joel, or yours, Emily, or Carol, or Amanda, the part that rings your bell or strikes your chord, then becomes enacted through you. And that becomes the future you bring into the present, because that's where you exist in the present.
Ginny, you've hit on a couple of kind of key themes here. I'd like to go a little bit deeper on each one. The first one is the true you. Ringing your own note. The Sufi poet Hafiz says, "I am the hole in the flute that the Christ breath breathes through. Listen to my music. I am the hole in the Christ breath." And as I think about this time, literally this moment that we all agree is our shared time, right? We're here in this moment, and I've heard people say that Thursday is now hollowed out Thursday, and Friday is fried Friday, right? And yet we're asked to lead. We are asked to lead. So in a way, when you talk about playing your unique note, two things come to mind. One, it's like, oh, you can kind of rest in that. Like, I don't have to play every note, I have to play my unique note. It feels joyful and spacious. And as leaders, we have a lot of notes we have to play. We have leaders right now whom we know are like, you know, looking at terrible budgets at the end of the calendar year and who are looking at 2021 with wide eyes because maybe they haven't done business development or haven't been able to do business development. We in the United States at least are looking at, you know, a holiday of such grief and such loss from COVID-19. And you've been writing an article for Forbes now on, how leaders are facing into this time. So when you think about being, playing your unique note, how can we help fortify leaders around that, but also recognize there are a lot of notes that they have to play?
Yeah, it, how how big a note we play is in some sense up to us. Because if you think about your life's been pretty much expanding since you were a little kid, right? In terms of your sense of self, and our sense of self evolves at every stage of development. We first get an ego boundary around the age of 2, when we identify, start to feel into ourselves as separate from our mother or from other people. We start to sense that we're a separate being. And we pass through a very egotistical stage of development where all we can really, we're really, we're everything revolves around us, right? And we interpret the world as revolving around us. Now, some people never exit that stage of development, and all of us can regress to it. And by the way, it's part of what's going on in our country right now. There's been a lot of regression to a to a pre-rational stage of development, pre-science, pre-fact, right? A lot of regression to a really um, immature stage of development. And by immature, I don't mean it's not wrong when we're 5, but when we're 50, that's a problem. So part of the challenge with leadership is that as we grow into a bigger life or grow into an increasing sense of responsibility, our sense of self likewise expands. If we're really co-developing with it, we start to care. We cast a wider net. We care about more people. We resonate one with our team, our organization, our community, our society. We start to hear those signals. What we vibrate with, what we pay attention to changes. And that is literally and physically energy that we take into our body and it vibrates in us. It sets off a chain reaction that becomes our action. So, as you say, we have to play a lot of notes. We become capable of conducting a symphony when we embrace that bigness as our purpose, as who we are. I'm a symphony conductor, right? When that's who I am. I'm not a violin player, I'm a symphony conductor. Our sense of self keeps expanding. Now, the now who is the true self? Here's where Zen has something very special to offer leadership, in my view, because virtually all forms of meditation and contemplative practice will help us see the ego better. They'll develop what we call a witness perspective. You probably have heard that term, but where we're able to see ourselves in the moment. Like I can catch ourselves with the angel on one side and the devil on the other. We see the choices we're making. We see our habits. What what still can remain problematic is not being able to see through that, to see through to other possibilities. And so, where Zen training really takes aim on the ego is to help us see that it doesn't define our whole self. That's not the totality of who we are. It's not the totality of who we are. And if we can see through it, then we can still have an ego without being a slave to the ego. And in fact, the ego can flip. And this is a lot of the flips I write about in the Zen Leader and that we teach about in Zen leadership, from being a tyrant, the one that wants to make life about it, to being a tool in service of life, in service of people. And when we can work in that way, then energy can flow through us without as much obstruction and stuckness. Those coping modes become really sticking points. And as those clear out, we can resonate with much more energy and be much more resilient. It's more like, I liken it to swinging on a swing set. where you pump your legs at the right moment rather than exhausting yourself in a frantic effort to prove yourself, which is basically how I went through the first half of my life.
we're, we're going to come to some of that. This is solid gold, you guys. I want to encourage everybody to light up the chat with your questions, or if there's something that caught you as like a nugget. I know that whenever I'm teaching with or learning from Ginny, I'm just writing as fast as I can, like many of you are. But Ginny, I want to come back to this point you just made about becoming more sensitive to what needs to happen. And in a way, I feel like your book resonate. You've got so many examples of people who have come through the dojo and who have come through the Institute for Zen Leadership and who have done this very thing. I mean, it's like our community is a walking case study of what is possible. And you write about one story. If I tee you up on this, I hope you can share it with our audience. So, our friend Christy Crimes, who's an MD in Missouri, right? And she went through one of the programs, and as a doctor, felt very encumbered. And this was even before COVID. And she had an interaction with a patient named Brad. And something amazing happened because of how she, probably imperceptibly to Brad, changed. Do you remember the story and could you recount it for us here?
Yeah, sure. Um, Christy was, as a family physician, she had seen Brad before. He was a contractor. That was his life and trade. That was all he knew. He learned it from his grandfather. This was his world. But he had hurt his back and he could no longer do his trade. And you know how this can become such a vicious cycle in healthcare because he couldn't work, he couldn't pay for the healthcare to get the treatment so he could get his back fixed so he could work. He was really stuck in that loop. And she knew, she was kind of standing outside the door where she was going to talk to Brad. And she knew he was going to be angry. And there was a part of her that was feeling like, I could just like write a quick script for physical therapy and kind of get through this thing. Getting through these kinds of difficult interactions is sometimes how we go through our day. But something in her stopped because one of the things that we very much train in is how to, we say, center, enter, and add value. So how to center in herself. So she knew to drop her breath into the lower abdomen, the area called hara, a real power center in the martial arts, Hara, hara. So she drops her breath. She centers herself and she goes in the room and she doesn't start with typical doctor questions. She starts by connecting with him as a human being. Like what a concept, she's inquiring about his life. She's inquiring about what's going on for him. And in her words, we joined, he shifted. I just want you to feel into that for a moment. We joined, he shifted. She didn't go in to change him. She went in to establish human connection, something any of us can do. Because she couldn't cure what was wrong with his back right then, but she could cure his aloneness. And that's what she did. He wasn't alone in the problem anymore. So he starts sounding out this idea that suddenly had come to him about teaching his trade to other people. And he actually starts sounding out this little business plan in the doctor's office about how he could train others to do his craft. And he followed up with her later to let her know how successful, in fact, that approach had become. So it was just an approach that, again, every one of us has available to us, where if we join with people, whatever can shift, whatever can open has a chance to do so, being supported by truly our love. Nothing more, nothing less. It's being supported by our love.
That's a word that I wish was used more in a business context, you know.
Yeah.
And, when you talk about joining with this little group that this is like my Scooby Doo gang, this little group that gathers every Friday to talk about futures or to talk with somebody like you. Um, I do think that we are fortified by the energy that we all bring to whatever the challenge is. And John Powell has said, we need each other. and we
Yeah.
have each other, which is sometimes hard for us to remember. This is such a beautiful story about Christy just kind of relax, release, and enter. Go in there
Right.
and enter, and how it changed Brad's life. I wonder, Ginny, if this might be a good time to pair off and to do the exercise that you brought.
Let me, if I may, do a
Please.
couple things before then, just to kind of warm us up to it, because um, I see a question in the chat around how this time of isolation, what do we can learn about resonance in this time of isolation? And one of the things I've really learned is how much really transmits through this medium, how much energy works at a distance. Duh, that would be why they call it energy. That would be why, that is part of the property of waves. They act at a distance. And so much is possible in this medium. And how we can shift that makes some of that possibility come about. So the what I just invite you into for a moment is just a few minutes of what I call hara breathing, to just get a feeling of how, through just shifting your own breath, it changes what energy you can sense and how you feel, both your what you can sense and then your own subjective feel. So you don't have to take my word for it. So if you're game, why don't we stand up for just a moment? Stand up and yeah, and just shake out any superficial tension. And I'd like you to feel your feet on the earth. And I mean, really feel them. Feel them connected one with the earth completely supporting you. And feel your knees soften so that the weight of your feet can come toward the big toe. And notice if you take your hands and press your hands together, something in the base of the abdomen starts to light up. It's like a there. You're not sure what it is. It's just down there around the pelvic floor. We don't usually pay a lot of attention, and yet there it is. And notice when you quit pressing, it sort of goes away. Can you experience that? Kind of give me a thumbs up if you can see that. I was, yeah, all right, good. Now notice, here's the magic part, because this is the part that's available to you all the time, even when you're not pressing your hands together. Notice you can plug your toes into the earth and get the same sensation. And then unplug them and they go away. By plugging in, I mean it's like a little bit of extension through the big toe. And there's a sense of, we call this setting the hara, setting the center. And it allows a lot of energy to develop down here. It's a practice in Aikido and Qigong and different kinds of Tai Chi of energy cultivation in the body, working with these lower chakra centers to really develop a kind of energized being. So, how can we blend that with breath? Let a breath flow in and the hands come up to the solar plexus. And now plug in your toes as the palms turn to the earth and let out a long, slow exhale. So slow. And just invite off. It's just to drain down like water from an eave to the earth. Try that again. Plug in toes and it drains down. Right through the hara, right through those big toes into the earth. Feel completely connected. One more. The in-breath comes in, the toes release, relax, and now they plug in and settle down. Great. Let your arms now just drift up as the toes relax. Plug in the toes and now feel a sense of expansion, 180-degree vision where you can see both hands at the same time on this long, slow exhale. Feel that bigness radiate out from you. Let's feel the centeredness again. So up and down center. So you feel that center that I talked about with Christy. And now the bigness. How can you add that value? Expand in all directions. Beautiful. The exhale is the relaxing part of the breath cycle, so we make it nice and long. Last set. Settle down. Just notice anything changing in your senses or in your sense of how you feel or in your energy. Just notice. Okay. And come on back. Come on back. So let me just do a check-in with you. Um, we don't have to use the chatterfall approach. You can just enter your answers. Anything you notice that shifted in you as you did those, you just did 9 breaths together. Anything you noticed in that? What changed in your senses, in your being, in your energy, in your bigness? So you can feel when groundedness comes in. So there's a sense of blood pressure dropping. This slow breathing is helping a resonance come into the body where the head, the heart, and the hara can add up into more coherent energy. So the shoulders relax. Now, when there's relaxation in the body, we get more flow and harmony. That's a sign of well being and effectiveness, as opposed to rigidity and chaos. Rigidity and chaos that um, that is the sign of ineffectiveness and illness. Some of you are noticing how thinking has changed and vision has changed and hearing has changed. Notice what that means. It means you're able to take in different kinds of energy. Notice if there's less tension in the body, you're better able to vibrate with that energy. So that's what we mean by changing your condition of resonance through simple practices like this. And that's, of course, what we build on in the book Resonate. Um, the uh, so what I just invite you into in this simple experience is to notice how quickly the you can change the state by by how you attend to the present moment, right? Not only can you do that for you, but then by extension, as Christy did with Brad, as you are centered and you enter a situation, you can add your value in a way that helps other people. So with that, maybe it's time for um, what I would say about, just to summarize with resonance. Resonance is a fact. It's not a belief system or like sometimes it happens and sometimes it doesn't. It's sort of like looking at a body of water. When waves come together, something is going to happen. It's not optional. And moment by moment, how we are in the massive waves of energy that are flowing through us right now, um, is also specific to our nature and exactly this instrument that is being played through, the flute, as it were, that is being played right now. And how wondrous we can cultivate the flute so that it whew, becomes even more, it can play even more beautiful music, as it were, music that's truer to exactly who we are. So something can, the way I've come to think of it is Dennis commented of ego lightened, it's like something plays through rather than I do, if you understand the difference I'm talking about. It's something playing through. So practices that will integrate this body mind system, that tune it to have less tension and tame that ego and all of its fears, bring us into this more resonant state. That is that is the fact. and every tradition has their own approach to how to do that. But that's what we're doing. And when we become intentional about those practices, we can become our most resonant self. And what manifests through us becomes what the mind will interpret as the purpose of your life. Purpose emerges from all of this. So now let's do that partner exercise. What partner exercise are we going to do? What I'd like you to do, and we're going to go into a room where you're going to be with one other person. And for the first 30 seconds, 30 seconds, 30 seconds. So someone might want to set a timer or just kind of like wing it. But for 30 seconds, I want you to send unconditional positive regard to the other person. Radiate love. That's it. That's all I want you to do for 30 full seconds. Radiate unconditional positive regard to the other person. So then you can end that 30 seconds of, of loving silence with just a simple thank you. And I'd like you to voice with one another one thing you felt in that exchange, just so you can kind of share what that was for you. And then one positive change that you would like to bring into this world, your family, this community, your business. One positive change you're trying to bring into the world around you and how this positivity could help. How could you, how that could help? So I'd like you to just have that conversation. So it's going to be about 8 minutes, 30 seconds. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Unconditional positive regard. Then you could say thank you, share how you felt, and then one positive change you're trying to bring into the world around you and how this positivity might be able to help. So are we ready, Rebecca? I think we're going to have 8 minutes total for this.
We are going to
Uh,
have 8 minutes total, and every room except one is going to have 3 people. Just because, oh, actually, hang on. Um, I can move you to, all right, now every room will have 2 people. So I'm going to open the rooms when you say go, Roshi.
oh, let's do it. Let's do it. Have fun. 8 minutes.
I'm just watching how the rooms are opening. Hey, Holly, do you need help? You got it.